The afternoon had begun the way most of his afternoons did, a quiet errand, a bill at the counter, a mind half on his phone and half on the list of things his mother had handed him at sunrise. His name was Arshia, and at 26 he carried himself with the kind of careless ease that fooled everyone into thinking he was easygoing. He was not. Beneath the careless ease was a man who had built his life around small freedoms and a stubborn, unannounced pride. He smiled at the salesman, swiped the card, and waited for the receipt to print. That was when a girl with 2 heavy shopping bags took the corner too tightly and walked straight into him. The bags hit the floor. Both of them knelt at once to gather the things that had spilled out, and because they moved at the same instant, their foreheads met with a small, soft thud. He felt the shock of it run down his spine before his mind had time to register anything else. "Sorry," he said. "Sorry," she said. Their voices rose together, and at the sound of his own words stacked on top of hers, Arshia lifted his head. She lifted hers. And for a beat that lasted longer than any beat should have, they looked at each other. Her eyes carried embarrassment, a flicker of nervousness, and the beginning of an apologetic smile. She was very beautiful, and the kind of beautiful that did not know it was being beautiful. Time, which is supposed to keep walking, seemed to stop and lean against the wall. The mall noise, the chatter of families, the muted pop track from the store behind him, everything receded into a low, faraway hum. "Inshi, jaldi aao," a voice called from somewhere behind her, sharp and impatient. The girl flinched. She gathered the bags with both hands and walked quickly over to another young woman who was standing a few paces away, waiting with her arms crossed. The two of them turned and were swallowed into the crowd. Arshia parted his lips to say something, what, he could not have told you, but the words never came. He watched the place where she had been. He watched the place 2 steps beyond it. He stood there long enough that the salesman cleared his throat. "Sir, please, your card." Arshia blinked. He turned to take his card back, then turned his head to look once more at the empty corner. She was gone. He paid in silence, took his bag, and walked through the entire mall as if he had suddenly developed a fever. He went past every clothing store, every cosmetics kiosk, every corner where 2 paths crossed. He did not find her. Of course he did not find her. She had disappeared, and with her she had left behind the kind of absence that does not politely leave a person alone later. That face was now printed somewhere inside him, and no amount of looking at the same shops again was going to peel it off. He drove home in a strange mood. He parked half on the curb, walked in through the front door, and was greeted by the sound of his mother laughing on the phone. The laugh had a particular edge to it, the one she saved for plotting. That evening, while dinner was being set out, she cleared her throat in the way she always did when she was about to drop a small bomb onto her son's plate. "Your knicker is on Sunday." The spoon he was holding stopped in midair. The laugh in his chest, which had been rising to meet hers, fell like a stone. "Ami, what are you saying?" "I'm saying exactly what I said. Sunday. After us. You've met her, Beta. You know who I'm talking about." He did know. He knew, because his mother had been talking about her orphaned niece for years, the one she had raised on and off between her own children, the one she had loved with the wild, slightly unhinged love that only mothers carry for children they have chosen rather than born. The girl's name was Inshira, and Inshira had been a quiet presence in their lives since she was 6 years old. Arshia had never paid much attention to her. She had always been that shy younger figure who appeared at family weddings and disappeared into the womenfolk section before he had time to notice her. And now his mother had decided, in her usual immovable way, that this shy figure was going to be his wife. "Ami, I'm not going to do it. I don't want this knicker. I won't be able to make your dear niece happy. Please leave your stubbornness." He packed every bit of helplessness he had into his voice, hoping to move her. Nothing moved her. "Never make her happy," his mother laughed. "Just let the knicker happen once, and watch, you'll spin around her like a top." His face fell. "Ami, I love someone else. My slipper has a strike ready for your so-called love." He tried every angle he knew. Ami, I'll refuse at the exact time of the nikah and ruin your name in front of everyone. I have no hesitation about filling your lap with slippers and walking you down the aisle as the groom. Ami, I'll cry. I'm telling you the truth. Then cry. I'll shut my son up with a lollipop. She had an answer for everything. The guests around him, who had heard the same war take place at every family gathering for years, began to chuckle behind their hands. He looked around the room for a single ally and found none. Even his father, who usually tried to mediate these earthquakes, saw the look in his wife's eye and quietly pulled his chin down into his collar. Abu, please. You try to make her understand. Have I ever understood her before today, that I will make her understand today? His father muttered, and lowered his eyes. A laugh went around the room, a kind, sympathetic laugh, the kind that says we have always known this man has no chance, and Ashir answered it with a faint, defeated smile of his own. Be ready by us on Sunday. We are leaving for the village. I want no theatre, his mother commanded, and everyone nodded dutifully. Fine, he said, as you wish. He did not mean it. He had run out of weapons, but he had not surrendered. Sunday came the way uncomfortable days always come, too quickly and with too much sunlight. Everyone arrived at the village by the appointed time. The gathering was small, only family, and when the Qazi Sahab entered the room, Ashir's eyes lifted toward his mother one more time. It was not a look, it was a plea, and she refused it with the same ease with which she had refused every plea since Friday. The nikah was performed. The verses were read. The bridegroom was asked to say Kabul, and he said it, because by the time the question had been put to him his mother had already fixed him with a look that promised something far worse than embarrassment. The nikah reached completion. The decision to leave for the city right after the nikah, without giving the new couple any private time at the village, was Ami's small, merciful gift to her son, and Ashir felt it like salt in a wound. His new wife sat veiled beside him on the drive back. She was a passenger he had not chosen, but the more he tried not to look at her, the more he felt her presence. Where he saw her only as the reason his carefully planned escape had been cut short, she sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. Inshira was feeling what she would later describe as joy wrapped in grief. One corner of her heart, the corner that had been bruised by all the years her maternal relatives had reminded her she was a burden and a guest in her own family, was now lifted because at last she had somewhere solid to belong. The other corner was heavy with the memory of parents she could no longer hold. She had lost her mother when she was 9 and her father when she was 14, and her Mamani, a maternal aunt, had taken her in. The aunt had been kind, but kindness is not a home, and Inshira had grown up knowing that to live under someone else's roof meant never to forget, ever, that you were not the one who chose to be there. At home, Ashir walked past everyone, refused every ritual, and went to his room to change. The room had been dressed up for him. Someone, probably his mother, had scattered rose petals across the bed. Someone had hung a small floral heart above the headboard. The sight of it made his nerves heavier. Bitterness crept into his chest and pulled there. He changed into his nightclothes with effort. As he was leaving the room, he turned and stared for several seconds at the heart of flowers on the bed. Then, without ceremony, he crushed it under his shoe and trampled the scattered petals on his way out. He stumbled against a stool by the door, kicked a basket of ribbons out of his way, and left the house. Mamani Jan, his mother's elder sister, who had helped dress the room, saw Inshira's face when she told her, gently, that Ashir had gone. Don't worry, Beta. He's only cross with me. That's why he's a little irritable. Mamani Jan, what if he gets angry at me? Inshira asked, and there was a small tremor in her voice. Heavens, child, why would he ever be angry at you? You're so lovely that the moment he sees your face he will forget he was ever angry. But if he ever is, she said, lowering her voice as though she were revealing a secret recipe, you tell me, and I'll beat every bit of his mood out of him with my slipper. Mamani Jan, don't say that. Even now, you will hit him. Inshira's eyes opened in surprise. Absolutely. When he gets too much, I give him a good one. Even now. Inshira laughed without meaning to. The laugh was small, but it was the first one in the room since morning, and Mamani Jan smiled at the sound of it. Mashallah, my child, keep on laughing like this. Now rest. I'm going. She left softly, closing the door behind her. Inshira looked at the empty bed. The crushed heart of flowers lay on the floor by the headboard. The ribbons from the basket that had been kicked were scattered across the room. The fragrance of roses was still in the air, but it felt heavy, the way a song feels heavy when you have just been told the news you were afraid of. She put on a comfortable dress and lay on the bed. She did not cry. Crying, she had learned long ago, did not always bring anybody back to the room. In the morning when she woke, the room was empty. He had not come back all night, and she knew, because she had stayed awake until past 3, listening for the gate. She began to dress quickly. While combing her hair, she heard footsteps in the corridor. The door opened. Ashia walked in. Startled, she put the edge of her dupatta over her face. He glanced at her, a glance that lasted less than a second and carried the full weight of distaste, and turned toward the washroom. Halfway there, he stopped. Something in him, some ragged thing, wanted to be said. "You will never be my wife," he said. "You are only my mother's choice. I love someone else. It will be best for you if you don't keep any hope from me." He left the room as if he had not just made a crater of a woman's first morning as a bride. The words did, exactly, what a stone would do if you dropped it from a height into still water. They sank slowly, and as they sank they sent ripples through everything. Inshira sat very still. Her hands were shaking, but the rest of her was not. The humiliation sat in her chest, and beside it, quietly, sat something harder, anger. That afternoon Ami, who never lost a battle, armed herself with another weapon. She called her son on the phone. "Assalamu alaikum, Ami Jan, how are you?" "Wa alaikum assalam. Exactly as you left me." His mother's tone was crisp. He had left home, but he still called her 3 times a day. He was angry with her, but he was incapable of being indifferent to her. "Here, Ashia, at least talk to your wife once." She saw Inshira bringing tea into the drawing room, and on the pretense of finishing the call, she put the phone into Inshira's hand. "Assalamu alaikum," Inshira said, because Ami Jan was in the room and courtesy was not optional. Ashia did not answer her greeting. There was a silence, and into the silence he put a sentence. "What a shameless girl you are. It looks like you have no self-respect at all, or else why would you still be living so shamelessly in my house?" Inshira took her time before she answered, and when she answered she was not loud and she was not afraid. "You, sir, are the coward," she said. "Wishing to walk around with a gun resting on my shoulder. And let me remind you of something you seem to have forgotten, you were the one who came, in all your finery, to fetch me here yourself." The sentence burnt him. He retaliated. "And you, madam, are shameless as well as ill-mannered." "This too," she answered calmly, "was discovered in me only after I tied myself to you. Before that, I had no idea. You, useless, uncouth girl. Even talking to you is pointless." "Then don't. Who has forced you to talk to me? I, too, have no desire to waste my precious time on you." She cut the call. He had planned to reprimand her further. The call ending left a bitter taste in his mouth. He sat staring at the screen, as if the screen were to blame. He repeated, almost to himself, "What a thick-skinned girl. Even after being disrespected like this, she lives so comfortably in my house." He had been counting on the fact that her pride would not let her stay under a man who had publicly rejected her. He had been wrong. What he did not know, and would not learn until much later, was that Inshira's tying herself to him had not been a romantic choice. It had been an escape. Her maternal relatives had begun to make noises about the growing expenses of her upkeep. They had begun to remind her, with the quiet cruelty of small remarks, that she had no father to bring her a share of inheritance, no mother to negotiate her marriage, and no brother to defend her name. They had, in short, given her the feeling that her welcome was running out. The nicker at Ashir's house had been a refuge. It had been the first time in her life that she had been claimed openly. To leave here would be to walk back into a house where she had never been allowed to forget that she was a guest. So she stayed. Not because her heart was full of him, it was not, it was bruised and cautious and very tired, but because the alternative was even harder. "Beta, did you speak?" Zainab Sahiba asked, watching him lost in thought after the call. "Yes, Ami Jan, I did." He lied without flinching, and the lie made the silence in the drawing room thicker. Days passed. Ashir came home later and later. He stopped giving her orders in the morning. He stopped serving her small cruelties at breakfast. He even stopped avoiding her. He had grown tired of avoiding her, the way one grows tired of looking at a stain one has not had the energy to scrub. Inshira moved quietly inside the house. She learned his tea preferences by the way he left a cup unfinished. She learned that he liked the book on the second shelf of the study left open to the last page he had read. She never spoke to him unless she had to, and when she did, the words were polite and brief and carefully unhurt. In her silence, everyone in the house began to read a particular kind of warmth. His mother watched her son come home, watched his eyes brush past Inshira in the kitchen, and shook her head. His father watched from behind his newspaper and never said a word. Mamani Jan brought her dry fruits in a little brass bowl every evening and sat with her, talking about nothing. And then came the night of his sister's dolki. The dolki, in their family, was a small pre-wedding ritual. The bride's younger sister sat at the center of a circle of women, a wooden dolki suspended from the ceiling, and the women sang, clapped, and tied little charms onto the bride-to-be. His sister Hira sat in the middle, glowing. The women around her were laughing. The songs were loud, sometimes tuneless, sometimes beautifully old. And at the center of it all, tying her love onto the dolki and singing to Hira, was Inshira. She was standing with the women, but she had drifted closer to the dolki because the charm she was tying had a knot that was harder than the others. She was half smiling as she worked the knot, half listening to the next song, her dupatta slipping without her noticing. She sang along with the line the aunties were singing, and her voice, soft and clear, blended in at the right place. There was no performance in her. She moved as though she had always belonged to this circle of women, this house, this song. She was luminous. Ashir had stopped at the doorway. He had come down the corridor for water, drawn by the noise of the dolki, and had paused when he had seen his sister. He had watched his sister since childhood, seen her at every dolki in the family, watched her spin and clap and laugh. That was his sister. And there, by her side, was a girl he had never really seen before. Not as a shy niece hidden among the older women. Not as a face he had despised out of habit. As a person. A living, smiling, glowing person who was, in the strangest and cruelest twist of his life, the very girl he had married. His mind went blank. His lips went dry. He felt the room tilt, the way a boat tilts when a wave hits the wrong side. He had refused to see her because seeing her had felt like surrender. He had been blind to her because seeing her would have meant admitting that his mother, in her tyrannical and unyielding way, had been right. Ami, whose side is this girl from? The question came out of him before he knew he was going to ask it. Several aunties turned to him with raised eyebrows. His mother, who was sitting at the head of the circle, looked at him. Then she laughed, a full, ringing laugh that filled the dolki room and erased every shadow in it. "You rogue," she said. "You are asking me whose side your own wife has come from." 7 skies fell on his head. Bewildered, half mad, half awake, he crossed the circle, caught Inshira by the wrist, and pulled her out of the dolki song before the aunties or the bride or Hira could say a word. He dragged her, not roughly, but with the urgency of a man who has just realized something that he cannot keep to himself, through the corridor, through his study, and into his room. He pulled her toward his chest as soon as the door closed behind them. His fingers were already trembling. "Don't touch me," Inshira said. The words were not loud. They were firm. "Don't touch me. I want nothing to do with a small-minded man." She pushed him away with all her strength. He staggered back. His face, a moment ago tender with something he could not name, was now drenched in hurt. She looked at him for a long second, and in that long second every bruise of the past week sat on her face, the night he had not come home, the morning he had called her a thing, the phone call he had hung up on with a smirk, the cruelty that had been his only conversation with her. She stepped away. She opened the door. She left. Ashia sat on the edge of the bed that still smelled faintly of crushed flowers. The crushed heart, the one he had stamped on his first night, was still lying where he had left it, half pressed into the carpet. He stared at it. He had been wrong. He had been wrong in every direction. He had been wrong to compare a stranger's face at a mall counter to the woman he had refused to look at for 4 weeks. He had been wrong to think that cruelty could buy back control. He had been wrong to assume that Inshira's quietness was emptiness. His mother appeared in the doorway. She did not say a word. She simply stood there. Then she turned and walked away. The next morning, Ashia did not leave the house early. He waited. He waited in the corridor until he heard her footsteps. Inshira passed by him. He stopped her. He said her name, properly, for perhaps the first time. He told her he had been cruel, and that he was sorry, and that the word sorry was far too small a word, but it was the only one he had today. He did not promise her the moon. He did not promise to fall in love with her. He promised only that from this morning onward he would look at her as a person, and that the looking would not be a weapon. Inshira stood still. She did not soften at once. She had spent so long being stiff that softening felt like falling. She said, simply, that she would accept nothing less than respect, and that respect, once earned, would be returned in equal measure. From that day, slowly, the house began to change. He stopped leaving town at night. He asked her, twice, which cup of tea she herself preferred. He helped her set up Hira's dolki decorations. He carried the heavy basket of roses without being asked. He never touched her without permission. He never raised his voice at her. He never said her name in anger. And one evening, while Hira's wedding was 3 days away, Mamani Jan caught him standing in the kitchen doorway watching Inshira make chai, and she began to laugh in that low conspiratorial way of hers. "Beta," she said, "I told you. You're spinning around her like a top." He smiled. For the first time in many weeks, the smile reached his eyes. That evening, when the house was finally quiet and the rubble of the wedding preparations had settled, Inshira went to the top-floor balcony to breathe. Ashia followed. He stood a few steps away from her, leaning on the railing, his hands folded in front of him. The city was below them, half asleep. The wind was mild. The stars were sharper than he had ever noticed them. "Inshira," he said. She turned. "The day I stepped on that flower heart on the bed, I thought I was freeing myself. And now?" "Now," he said, "I think it was the first wrong step of a man who was too proud to see what was right in front of him." Inshira did not answer immediately. She looked down at her own hands, then at the railing, then at the sky. "I am not the girl who walked into you at the mall," she said. "I know. I am the girl your mother chose." "I know." "Then why are you here?" He thought about it for a long time. He thought about his mother's laugh. He thought about Mamani Jan's brass bowl. He thought about the way Inshira had rooted her knot into the dolki knot without even knowing. He thought about how he had crushed a heart on the first night and had not realized that the heart was not a decoration, it had been his own. "Because," he said finally, "you, Inshira, are not someone I can love on a schedule. You are someone I have to learn. And I am only just beginning." She turned back to the sky. She did not say yes, and she did not say no. She let the silence sit beside them on the railing, and the silence, for once, was not a wall. Far below, an old banyan tree stood at the corner of the lane, and above the lane, in the quiet of the balcony, a man and a woman stood at the start of a thing they had not planned.